Peace to the planet. You know what it is. A decent the bishop chilling the most. Thank you for all of your cool messages and hit ups on IG and here on Substack. Yeah, we chilling. The London episodes are still popping. Um, it's cold out here. I'm not gonna lie. But I'm having a great time. I'm having a great time. I'm having a great time. I'm chilling. You can see I still haven't shaved because I don't care. I don't care. I'm enjoying the stillness. I am reading. I am meditating. I am yogaing. I am working out. I am eating a lot of sugar. Um, I know I talked about not eating, and I'm so close to my goal. I'm only like 5 pounds off, but London's got great things to eat. But so I'm doing it. You know what I'm saying? I'm doing it, and I no regret. Out when I get back, I'm back on it. You already know the deal. You know what I'm saying? I'm really close to my goal. I'm not tripping. I want to thank all my friends and extended fam out here in London. Ben, Jordan, Jude, um, Eamon, Lewis. You know what I'm saying? Come on, man. Young Lewis out here. You know what I'm saying? Kicking it with the youth, getting in my build on. You know what I'm saying? Life is good. I'm not complaining. But this show is a serious show. So if you have kids or teenagers around, not for this one. Yeah, not for this one. We're having a serious conversation about Epstein, Diddy, Fiddy, talking about 50 Cent, and just kind of where we're at in this whole situation. I don't intend to do a lot of these kinds of shows because they're hard on my heart. I did a lot of years volunteering um, back in the day at a few prisons and a lot more time in juvenile halls. And so talking about abused kids and stuff like that is crazy. Plus, people keep asking me if I've seen the Diddy documentary, assuming I'd find it interesting, and I don't. And the reason I don't is because, for those of you that do remember, I wrote about hip hop since I was 17 years old, starting in 1987. Tupac was a friend of mine, and it's not entertaining to me. It's actually triggering for me. It's causing PTSD for me. It's reminding me about people, places, and things that I've heard. Uh, some things that I like remember other people telling me, obviously I ain't been to no Diddy parties or anything like them ever. And I'm happy about that. I am not one of these weirdos in the hip hop space. I don't support weirdos in the hip hop space. That's gonna come up in a little bit. And so we're just gonna have this whole conversation. All right. So let me just, and I apologize if this is fragmented because this was really messing with my head last night. So I've been thinking about it too much, honestly, thinking about it too much. So, um, okay, I'm just gonna jump into it. I'm gonna jump into it. So as a Stoic, right? Looking at this as an aspiring Stoic, I don't consider myself a Stoic, and a lot of you know I consider myself an aspiring Stoic. I think that the Stoic state and the Stoic way of being is not something any of us can be all the time, let alone ever, right? But it's something we should always be aspiring toward. And I started asking myself, like, what does um a Stoic say about this whole scandal and everything else, right? And so, really, what I'm trying to do is within myself and within yourselves, I'm asking you to do a moral gut check. Who are you when it gets real? Um, so let's take a look at people like Epstein and Diddy first, right? Um, and if we're being honest, a lot of the times I see people in hip hop really hammering down on the Epstein stuff, but they don't have that same energy for Africa Bambaataa. There's other people in hip hop. who um have not only been accused like in the rumor mill, but have had court cases brought to them. And you see hip hop news stay silent like church mice on all of it. This bothers me, right? So let's just kind of look at some of that. And the protectors of people like Africa Bambaataa, right? The people who won't question, you know, the history of Russell Simmons. Long before you guys were talking about him, there were things, there were things. And so I'm going to leave that alone, but we'll keep going real quick. Um, you know, Stoics would view Diddy and Epstein and predators like them as not powerful. Seneca said that all cruelty springs from weakness, right? And this is because these men, no matter how much money they have, no matter who they got to hang out with, no matter what the jets and the islands and the gold and the shiny suits, right? That they are slaves to their appetites, right? No man is free who is not master of himself. And self-mastery is a forever kind of thing, right? It is a forever kind of thing for those who try to take it on. Everybody doesn't try to take it on. But others, you can see their appetites become a cancer to them. I've seen just friends, not even dealing with like famous people, seen alcohol become a cancer to their life. We all know how many people in our families, right? Let alone friends, right? We have seen, I mean, I'm from the 80s, bro, talking about as a teenager, cocaine, bro, crack, bro, suburban meth, bro. I mean, come on, man, right? And so, these men, talking specifically about Epstein, Diddy, and people like them, other abusers in hip hop and whatnot, they are controlled by lust. They are controlled by an ego they cannot satisfy. And, they weaponize their power because they're powerless within themselves ultimately, right? So they love the praise, they love the awards, they love the fanfare. And that becomes the litmus test for their own personal value, right? And this is why they need to dominate others because they cannot dominate their own vices within themselves. This is real, okay? You know, and these are people, I need to remind you that, you don't want to be like these people. You do not want to be like these people. You know, One of the things I learned early writing about hip hop back in the day was that early, because I met Easy so young, I was like 17 and we chilling and talking and laughing, and I realized how human he was. Just human. And that's what made it possible for me to connect with other artists for the rest of my life. I don't care whether we're talking about Chuck D, I don't care if we're talking about RZA, Jizza, whoever else I rock with in hip hop. You know why? Because I'm always treating them like human beings, not like superstars, not, and this doesn't mean I don't recognize who they are in society, but I speak to them as a human being. And they recognize that. And that's why I'm able to keep these long-range friendships, right, in order. But a lot of these abusive types, right, they're locked into the fame and it's the only way that they can measure how they see themselves. And so, the best revenge is to not be like that, is what Marcus Aurelius taught, right? So a Stoic does not envy others' wealth or fame or their temporary escape from consequences because Stoics understand that a person who harms others for pleasure is already living in a prison of their own making. And this prison is something that they can't ever escape, right? A guilty conscience is a perpetual state of bondage. Because even if they don't face the legal consequences, and we want them to, They cannot escape knowing what they've done, living with who they are in that mirror. I remember when Puffy first got into the clink and those pictures of him came out with the gray and the half-baked afro, salt and pepper everywhere. Do you know how hard that was for him? I actually predicted he would kill himself. Not because I wanted him to, but I didn't think that as someone who I believe is actually deeply narcissistic, that he could see this person in the mirror with the wrinkles and no gold and no jerry curl and gray everywhere, no makeup, no suit. I thought he was going to kill himself out of the horror of seeing himself. Right. And so no amount of money, power, or protection can free them from themselves. Right. Can free them from themselves. Um, in other news, I don't believe that Epstein killed himself, like at all. Now, um, and now let's talk about the protectors, enablers, cover-up artists, and how complicit they are. When Africa Bambaataa first got accused of what he was accused of, molesting lots of young boys, primarily Black and Latino boys, in and around the South Bronx, and flying them around under the guise of cultural exchange, but really using those trips to um, do heinous things. So many people from hip hop came out to protect him. Some of these are some of your favorite conscious rappers. Look in to Google and look and see what your favorite conscious rapper has said about Africa Bambaataa's abuse. Many of them protected this man. Some of them still do. In fact, because I need to get this right, there was an article. I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to pull this up because I don't want you to think that I'm lying. Okay, player. Africa Bambaataa and the Universal Zulu Nation scandal. Look into it. Eric Arnold is one of the greatest hip hop journalists of our time. He's one of the best writers of right now. If you remember, what was that Boots film? Sorry to bother you. The guy gets upset. He gets on, I want to talk to Eric Arnold for a reason. Read that article. Read that article and then go look at how many clowns in hip hop, all these courageous G's. Oh, you know what I'm saying? We don't care about nothing, bro. We from the streets. We get it. We ain't having it. Africa Bambaataa, we need to. Boy, one of the people told me, one of the really realist West Coast Zulus, he said, if you listen to a lot of Africa Bambaataa's uh talks, he would always talk about the Luciferian systems in government and spirituality and how they would manipulate people. And he said, I now realize he knew those things because he was doing those things. And that really shattered my heart. And I say this as someone who benefited from friendship with Africa Bambaataa. But we ain't friends so much you can be a molester, blood. No. Um, and it broke my heart because I realized he was more right than wrong. Right. But all of the defenders of Diddy, and you see all these rappers, oh, 50 shouldn't have made that. You know what I mean? Like, that wasn't right, bro. You can't be doing it, keep another black man down. What? Same thing. You trying to run defense for Cosby, you trying to run defense for R. Kelly, you trying to run defense for Diddy, you trying to run defense, bro, for Bam. Mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm. You're actually worse. You're actually worse. The defenders of these people are worse than the offenders. And if I'm talking about your favorite rapper, good. I'm glad you know it. Because a man enslaved to his vice is pitiable, morally bankrupt. but he's predictable. They're everywhere. A predator acts from compulsion, but the protectors, the lawyers who silence the victims, the handlers who pay off the witnesses, the people who threaten those that know the truth to keep them from saying it, the institutions, the record labels, the government officials. Yeah. The news people who just want to be close to people but not really tell the truth. They are worse because they chose complicity while claiming and trying to shield themselves with a veneer of virtue. Seneca said that he who does not prevent a crime, wait, I'm sorry, I'm reading that. He who does not prevent a crime when he can encourages it. All your favorite little hip hop news outlets, they're not news. They're just clickbait trying to get you through. They don't care what happens to Diddy. They just want you to read. They want you to argue in the comments. Man, I remember when hip hop used to want to make you a better human. I remember when hip hop media used to want you to have truth that mattered. Shout out to James Bernard from way back, original source crew, original founder. James Bernard, Google that man. I ain't talked to him in decades or whatever, but he was a real factor when the source was a source of truth. You know, the protectors are not victims of passion or addiction. They are rational actors who chose evil for profit, proximity to power, or self-preservation. Epictetus would say they have destroyed the only thing they truly possessed, their integrity. Yeah. You know, the Stoics might say that these are the morally dead, right? The protectors can tell good from evil. They know what they're protecting is monstrous. They do it anyway. That's not ignorance. That is a moral death. A lot of you clowns claiming to be journalists and podcasters. Pathetic. I just saw somebody saying that hip hop and black podcasts are actually worse than hip hop because they just like fuel the fighting inside the black community and inside the music industry. They are walking corpses in Stoic terms, alive in body, dead in spirit. So then what about the Stoic virtue of justice, right? A Stoic should demand justice. It's important to note that the Stoics were not pacifists, that they believed in justice, real, structural, legal justice, right? Seneca said, a sword never kills anybody. It is a tool in the killer's hand. The law is a tool, and it must be used for the benefit of society, not abuse. So the Stoic perspective is that, you know, full legal prosecution is what it is. No settlements, no NDAs that silence victims, public trials, public accountability. Ooh, somebody outside is getting into it. He said he wants to beat somebody up. It's kind of going down out there. Asset forfeiture, right? Come up off them ends, bro. Come up off them ends. Even if Diddy gets out whenever he gets out, and I don't think he'll ever get out. I think now that he's in the clink, it's gonna go from state to state. Wherever he owned a home, gonna get sued. Wherever he owned property, boats, all those places are gonna have charges because he was moving around all those places, right? Exposure of the network, right? And this is I know some of you young people may not remember Bernie Madoff. He was this guy that did all the Ponzi schemes. It's like a financial scheme where you just basically keep stacking on money, but you're not really investing, and then everything collapses, right? But like Bernie Madoff was one guy, bro. you know you can't steal that much money for so long by yourself. In the same way, whether it's Bam, whether it's Diddy, whether it's Epstein, come on, bro. They got networks. They didn't do it alone. People helped. We need to know who those people were. We need them exposed. We need them in jail. We need them held accountable. We need that money for the victims, not for me, right? And institutional reform. I think one of the things that I don't like about the 50 documentary, again, have not watched it, but one of the reasons why I'm not watching it is because as a journalist, being around a lot of this stuff, you heard things. I heard things. I didn't see nothing. Like I said, I didn't go to a lot of these parties. You know what I'm saying? But what you learn from these things is that the music industry is worse than you thought it was. At the top of almost all of this stuff, whether it's government, music, you know, film, it's worse than what you've heard. It's so horrible. And that's part of also why I don't need to know those details. I'm already disappointed. I don't need to know the details. I already had a feeling you had a hand in X, and now I'm really seeing it. Institutional reform can't happen if we don't know who was really in the network, if we don't know who really was holding the door open, if we don't really know who's looking the other way, if we don't know what news outlets were enabling these people, right? And ultimately, my other problem with the documentary, and I'm glad it's out. I don't want you to act like I'm just talking about me, why I'm not watching it, right? Is that I don't like that this is more entertainment than justice. Meaning, like, I'm glad people are aware. I'm glad, but like, we have to care, right? Epictetus said, what is the first business of the one who practices philosophy? To get rid of self-conceit. For it is impossible for anyone to begin to learn that which he thinks he already knows. We think we are a just society. And then President Trump, after saying he's going to be point blank about the Epstein files for years before even he got in office, sends out blank documents, black sheets of paper. He's trying to buy time, y'all. I know you know he's trying to buy time. And I don't think that time is just for himself, probably for sure. But it's for others who maybe know more than he does, who did worse than he did, who helped him be his worst self. But we have to protect the vulnerable. Every real civilization does. The Diddy and Epstein cases are a test to who you really are. Because if wealthy and powerful men can abuse dozens and hundreds of victims, operate trafficking networks, pay off law enforcement, threaten and silence survivors, die in custody under suspicious circumstances, continue living freely while evidence mounts, Diddy was just gigging until he got snatched, remember? Then we don't have justice. We have the veneer of justice that protects power. We have to, as Stoic seekers, an obligation to believe and support those who have been done wrong. You know, the survivors of Diddy, Epstein, R. Kelly, Weinstein, Cosby, they've lost years of their lives, their innocence, their sense of safety, their trust in humanity, right? So Stoics would teach us to believe those who have been abused, amplify those voices, support them materially, and do not re-traumatize them. We have to do better, you guys. I know you know that, but we have to do better. Epictetus said, if you don't wish to be a slave, Do not act like one. Oh my God. What's more actually frightening than freedom to most individuals? What's more frightening than freedom? Because then you have to be accountable. Then you have to acknowledge that it was you that didn't do X or did too much of Y or said too much about Z, right? And it's such a hard thing because so many people in high places run the machines we actually need that it gets hard to boycott everything. It gets hard to cut yourself off from everything. But I'm trying. I feel weird doing it little by little. But like, again, right? Like so many of these social network platforms are enablers of horrible things, people. But if this is the platform we try to connect on, then like I'm not saying Substack, I'm talking about other social network platforms. Um, it gets weird quick, right? Um, we got to watch out for victim blaming the survivors. We got to watch out for staying silent, talking about it's not my business. Children's well-being should be your business. Children's well-being should be your business. You know, um, I think there's a big difference the way that Stoics see like cancel culture versus accountability. You know, holding Diddy, Epstein, Bam, and others accountable is not cancel culture. It's consequences. People trusted Bambaataa with their kids. Diddy had, who's that kid? Bieber? Bro, Usher, bro. You know them dudes was exposed to insanity. You know it. And you can see it on their faces just when you say the guy's name. Watch their face. Whoop, mood, whoop, energy, whoop. Change, bro. Hmm. So we want to see, you know, real justice, not mob justice. You know, we don't want to see permanent exile from minor infractions. We don't want to see a place where people don't have redemption, but letting people just skate because they made a dope beat. Like, I mean, I like Planet Rock too, but I'll just listen to Trans Europe Express since that's where he stole the beat anyway. Hella people in hip hop are like, no, he did though. It's cool, but I didn't lie though. So, you know, let's start thinking about supporting survivors publicly. Let's stop financially supporting known abusers. Let's demand more accountability from the labels. But a lot of times the labels are the ones that are really pushing that lifestyle because that's how the CEOs and whatnot in them places live. And or they use that stuff to blackmail people later or whatever, man. It's all too weird up top. I can't pretend to know. Lord knows I ain't there. I'm just not. I'm too broke. And I tell too much truth and, you know, I don't care about a lot of the stuff that they care about. So, in closing, right, what did I say at the beginning? The best revenge is to not be like that. We prove that we're not like Diddy, Epstein, Bam, and others by choosing integrity over profit, protecting the vulnerable over the powerful, demanding justice over comfort, and speaking truth over staying silent when we know better. Seneca said that it is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult. The children of this world need to live in one where they're protected. And this doesn't mean that people have to pretend to be saints. This doesn't mean that people have to pretend to be angels. This doesn't mean that I don't have my own flaws as a human being, that I haven't made tons and tons and tons and tons of mistakes. But it does mean I'm trying, man. It means that I'm trying. I fall short a lot of who I try to live as. But I'm trying. I know a lot of you are trying. I know a lot of you have tried and will fail and will try again. And that's what makes us human, right? That's what makes us human. And in closing, I want to also say this, and this is important. I always talk about Socrates, right? Check out my podcast on Socrates, the warrior scholar, right? But if you know anything about Socrates, you know that he was killed by the Greeks of his time, by the political leaders of the time. But it was through this book called How to Think Like Socrates that I learned about why he was targeted. This is going to blow your mind because it blew mine. So back in the day, they had a bunch of oligarchs. Oligarchs are rich people in power. These would be like label owners, top billionaires, even, 10, 20, 30, 40 million millionaires, 100 million. Like these dudes can be like seen as oligarchs, right? Because they can use their money to make things happen. So listen, there was a young boy, and I may be saying his name wrong. And you know when I'm saying Greek things and things that aren't even in American English, and oftentimes American English, I say it wrong. I'm gonna try to get this right. In Greece, they had this group of oligarchs called the 30 Tyrants. And they basically were the lawmakers, and they could make people disappear, they could make laws unfair, they could get their lion's share, and that's how they ran things. One of them was this guy named Critias, and Critias had taken an affection for a young boy. Now, I'm not really sure if this was a teenager or a kid or whatever, but not a man is what, not a grown adult, not a consenting adult, right? His name was Euthydemus, I believe. So Critias, who was one of the 30 tyrants, loved Euthydemus and wanted to lead him astray. Let's not forget that when people try to make this whole thing about molesting kids, like it's innocent or I don't know, it's just me and this kid. Yo, you're a weirdo, bro. You're a weirdo. Stop being a weirdo. So Socrates apparently tried to pull Critias aside and restrain him, right? And say, no, it's unbecoming a gentleman to pursue like this. You're looking kind of weird. You're going out. Critias did not care because he's one of the 30 tyrants. He got the money, he got the power, he got the look. So one day in public, Socrates mocked him for his pursuit of Euthydemus. And he remarked that Critias appeared to be suffering from a swinish affection. Or else then why does he rub himself up against Euthydemus like a herd of piglings scraping against stones? That's what got Socrates killed. He stood up against an abuser of children, a sexual predator. And that sexual predator felt so humiliated that he went after Socrates. When he gained political power, he used everything in his power to point the finger at Socrates and get him killed. And that is how Socrates ended up having to drink the hemlock that killed him. Read Donald Robertson's book, How to Think Like Socrates, and you will learn a lot more than you think. Chapter 3 is my favorite. That's when you learn about the woman, Aspasia, who taught Socrates and took him to the higher level of his philosophy. Socrates got killed because he fought against child predators. And it's sad. And now let's circle back to Diddy. I look at Diddy, and this is someone I didn't understand in the beginning. I wasn't a fan of his persona in the beginning, but that's because I think I didn't really realize how real he was. I didn't understand how strategic and sharp-minded and disciplined he was. And I think coming from the West Coast, seeing what happened to Easy, what happened to Pac, I think part of me was like, just another one, right? But he's unique. And we have to applaud 50 for this documentary, even though I haven't watched it yet. I'll watch it at some point, right? But we could say, oh, he's just trying to hate on Diddy. Oh, he's just trying to be hella Machiavellian, right? And crush your enemies totally and all of that. But man, it don't matter. He's bringing truth to our understanding. A Stoic would say it's objectively good. Epictetus taught that what is good, knowledge. What is evil, ignorance. We didn't know before. We thought, but now we know. Right? His film gives survivors a platform, holds a predator accountable, protects potential future victims, serves justice, even if it's accidentally, even if he just wanted to embarrass him. Right? So it's virtuous irrespective of his intent, even if it is within himself supremely Machiavellian. Diddy will face consequences. A lot of other people in the industry will too. This is just the beginning, right? So 50 is not virtuous, but also not villainous in this, right? He's just doing what he's doing, and the outcome is the outcome. The thing is, we don't know if he's examining himself in this moment. We don't know if he's pursuing virtue. Maybe he's just pursuing victory. But what if he is pursuing virtue? What if he is trying to balance the scales of some aspect of his life that we don't even know about? Partially Machiavellian, yeah. But, you know, the people benefit. So I want you to think about what these times mean to you. I want you to think about who your heroes are, who your heroes are not. I want you to think about how do you want to be remembered in the future? Because you are an ancestor of a future time in this breathing moment. And people will be able to look back, look at all this data, all the years you've written online, all the emails, all the social posts that you have forgotten. Just think about all the stuff you've already forgotten. But you are someone's ancestor, even if it's just within your own lineage. Someone says, I want to see what grandma or grandpa thought about. I want to see what grandma and grandpa said in regards to. Ugh. Who do you want to be? You don't have to be a saint to care about children. You don't have to be uh, a sage on a mountaintop floating on a lotus pad to say that children are worth protecting. You know, we can argue about how best to hold artists, labels, music, and film empires accountable. But you can hold yourself accountable. You can do that. So do it. This is Adisa Banjoko, live and direct from London. More soon, more positive stuff soon. But I hope for justice for the victims, and I hope that there is a authentically good legal outcome and a good karmic outcome, a divine outcome that transcends the flaws of the systems we hope will serve us better. Peace.